What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button because that's the most important thing you can do for me on this channel. What it does, that helps make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get the notifications, and it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm as well. Secondly, if you're new to the channel, or maybe you've been ghost watching this channel for quite some time now, please do me a favor and yourself a favor by hitting the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms to your family and friends to inform them on this news and information. And yes, that does help to give me a slight boost in the YouTube algorithm as well. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today we have to discuss how Kamala Harris has been ducking and dodging and hiding from the press. She is refusing to have any type of conversation with the press in a free-form fashion that is unscripted. And the reality is that that is the real reason why we didn't see her attend I believe it was called the Black Journalists Association conference that Trump attended. Kamala Harris was invited. She stated that she could not be there in person. And when they extended an invitation to her out via Zoom, she came up with an excuse for why she couldn't attend a Zoom meeting as well. And it's clearly because her team is advising her not to speak to the press because she does not want to have to stand up and defend the policies of her and Biden. She has no defense for inflation, and she definitely has no logical defense for the migrant crisis, let alone having to answer for her time in California, and as well as answering any type of questions that may come around concerning her failed 2020 campaign. She has laid out a path of failure from throughout the entirety of her political career. And that is something that she does not want to have to answer to. Many people have been sharing these two particular clips that I'm going to pull up for you right now, where most recently she did address the press, but abruptly ran off each time. This tweet here reads, Kamala Harris just spent 30 minutes sitting in her car preparing to read remarks from a binder in front of the camera. And of course, she refused to take questions. She hasn't taken a single question since she was installed as nominee. The following tweet here reads, Harris is hiding. Kamala gives a brief statement, dodges questions from the same press, now giving her horrible record a makeover. It's the same 2020 playbook as Biden running from his basement. Once again, Democrat candidates act like the fix is in. Now, what I want to do next is that I want to go over to a quick video clip, a CNN clip of Vance, Donald Trump's vice president, because he has actually been answering questions where Kamala Harris quickly dodges the press. And I just want to take a moment to play this for you here, because what you're going to look at is Vance, who was at the border yesterday, taking some questions from a CNN reporter. And here's the reality of it. He's going to be critiqued and asked some questions concerning his own past, concerning what a Trump administration could look like, and everything of that nature. You may or may not agree with what he's going to say, but you have to commend him for at least standing in front of the press and speaking with the press and having at least the intellect to be able to fire off at will and freestyle in these conversations without having to have a teleprompter in front of his face or a handwritten script from his speechwriter. So let's get into this clip right now. I want to take a listen to this for a moment, and then I want to get into an article very briefly.
Senator Vance, we're at the border today. You just got done touring the border. Vice President Harris has contended that you and President Trump, former President Trump, had tanked the bipartisan border deal that would have provided a lot more funding to support the border. What is your response to that?
Well, look, the bipartisan border deal was actually a massive giveaway to illegal immigrants. It would not have solved any of the problems that Kamala Harris has caused. I mean, they came into the administration, they promised from day one that they would suspend deportations, that they would reinstate catch and release, that they would end remain in Mexico. They implemented these policies, and it had the intended effect of opening up the southern border. What happened is that Kamala Harris, who was the border czar, decided that this was not good politically, and so they tried to implement some new law that actually wouldn't have solved the underlying problem. They have the tools necessary. They just need to empower Border Patrol to tell people who want to come in illegally, you're not allowed to do that. They just need to use the authority that the border czar Kamala Harris has.
I want to ask you about the former president's comments yesterday to the National Association of Black Journalists, where he said that Vice President Harris is, quote, all of a sudden black. As a father of 3 biracial children, did those comments give you pause at all?
And for those of you who don't know, JD Vance's wife is Indian. She's Indian. So he has 3 what is it, 2 or 3, I think 2 biracial children, him obviously being white and his wife being Indian. But let's hear what he had to say.
They don't give me pause at all. Look, all he said is that Kamala Harris is a chameleon. She goes to Georgia 2 days ago. She was raised in Canada. She puts on a fake Southern accent. She is everything to everybody, and she pretends to be somebody different depending on which audience she's in front of. I think it's totally reasonable for the president to call that out, and that's all he did. I mean, look, she's running as a tough on crime prosecutor, even though she implemented open border policies. She's saying that she wants to support the police, yet she wanted to defund the police just 3 years ago. It's totally reasonable to call out the fact that she pretends to be somebody different depending on the audience she's talking to.
You used that word chameleon yesterday as well. You're someone who was an unabashed critic of the former president previously. Now you're his running mate. You're someone who has text messages out there now that say, I hate the police. Now yesterday you said, I back the blue. By your own standard, are you a chameleon?
That is a really good question. And these are the type of questions that Kamala Harris does not want to have to answer. Let's hear what he has to say.
Look, I criticized Donald Trump 10 years ago, and we've talked about it, and I've made a good argument to the American people about why I think he was a great president and why I think he deserves re-election. That's different than going to Georgia 2 days ago and putting on a fake Southern accent when you were raised in Canada. So I think it's totally reasonable to change your mind. Has Kamala Harris stood for a tough debate with you and explained why she wanted to ban fracking and now she doesn't, or why she wanted to defund the police and now she doesn't, or why she wanted to open the border but now she doesn't? It's reasonable to change your mind. It's not reasonable to run and hide from the media and not answer the American people's questions.
And that, in my opinion, was a great response. It's one thing to change your mind just simply over time about an individual, and it's one thing to be a complete flip-flopper going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I think you and I, we all know that if Kamala Harris was asked these type of questions, she would completely crumble into her giggling mode where she starts cackling and laughing out of control. And for as much as people like to speak about Trump losing it in the middle of interviews when he's challenged, we've seen Kamala Harris lose it multiple times. We watched her lose it against Charlemagne the God when he simply asked, where's the president at and who's actually running the country? She scolded him and virtually yelled at him saying, Charlemagne, you sound like a Republican right now. You need to chill out. And we all saw the way that she reacted very negatively and hostilely towards Anderson Cooper when Anderson Cooper was questioning her on how she felt about Joe Biden's bad debate performance. She completely went off and lost it on Anderson Cooper. She is someone who gets very nasty very quick when she is confronted or challenged. And once again, with the record as bad as hers, not just with her and Biden, but going back to her record during her time here in California and then her entire 2020 presidential campaign, there's no way that she's going to sit in front of the press and answer any questions without completely blowing it. And I believe that's exactly why we see that her team is making it a point to not allow her to speak to the press. What I want to do now in closing is that I want to shift over to this article here from Breitbart. I will make sure to leave the link in the description box below so you can read this article in its entirety for yourself. But it reads as such as we come in halfway through the article. During the 2020 campaign, Biden caught heat for campaigning from what former President Donald Trump called his basement. We have a sleepy guy in the basement of a house that the press is giving a free pass to, who doesn't want to do debates because of the great illness of 2020, Trump famously said in April of 2020. While some argue Biden's strategy included running out the clock by giving press conferences and interviews only sparingly, it did not keep him from the White House, as one expert told Fox News Digital. So it appears that they just might be running Joe Biden's 2020 play all over again. If not answering any questions to the press didn't affect Joe Biden in 2020, they're hoping that that will have the same effect, or that they are hoping that they will get the same desired effect with Kamala Harris, because in no way, shape, form, or fashion do they want her having to answer for her record. Jeffrey McCall A media studies professor at DePaul University told Fox News that Harris's team is well aware that Biden dodged the media throughout his 2020 campaign and still got elected. Engaging with the media, regarded for hundreds of years as the fourth estate or fourth unofficial check in the balance of government power, would force Harris to defend her record. Once again, something that we already know and understand is something that she doesn't want to do. McCall said the Harris camp is also well aware that their candidate does not do well in unscripted settings. Not to mention that a presser or a legitimate sit-down interview would necessarily require her to defend some of her positions, previous statements, and records, something that she does not want to do. She does not want to defend any of her previous position statements or her record. Thus, a rerun of the Biden basement campaign sounds pretty good, as long as you throw in a couple rallies with Megan Thee Stallion. He has jokes. He added, it would benefit Harris from a rhetorical strategy standpoint to engage with the press. At some point, it would seem she'll have to attract moderate and undecided voters who want to see her take questions, he said. And that's true. At some point, she's going to have to speak. But just like with Biden, she'll keep it very sparingly. It's not going to be something that's just opened completely to the press. They're going to be picking and choosing who they speak to very wisely to make sure that they're getting a very friendly questions, right? And not entering into what some could say is a possible hostile environment concerning being interviewed by people at Fox News. So they're going to make sure it's done in that fashion. And the reality is this, she has been surging in the polls. We'll see how long she'll be able to maintain the little slight surge that she has, or, kind of a major surge, to be honest, which is a bit odd, but it is what it is. If she's able to maintain the momentum that she has now, with the surge in polling, where a lot of polling is now showing that Kamala Harris is beating Donald Trump in a lot of these swing states. If she's able to maintain that, then essentially there's no reason for her to come out and speak to the press, right? They will be very picky and choosy concerning who they speak to and whether or not the interviewer will be friendly. But if the honeymoon phase runs out and those polls begin to sink again, she will be forced to have to come out of hiding and take the risk at making herself essentially not look good. She'll be taking a risk at not looking good because we've seen her fall apart over and over and over again at some of the most basic press conferences where she has to answer some of the most basic questions, and she just starts giggling and cackling and laughing like a fool. So we'll see how this plays out moving forward, and I'll keep an eye on it and make sure to report it back to you. So with all that being said, thank you for watching today's video. Please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Please share this video out on your social media platforms. And also don't forget to follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. And don't forget to follow me on Rumble at TD Media Group as well. Thank you all for your time, and until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.